For as long as mankind has waged war, art has exposed its harshness, its devastation, and its tragic effects on both combatants, the inevitable instruments of war, and the civilians, those who find themselves in harm's way. Some have argued that art serves merely to document, to freeze in time, small and important historical moments that may otherwise have been lost. It is my view, however, that artists do so much more than merely record history and events. In war and elsewhere, artists provide us with powerful insights into the human condition through their unique, sensuous, and emotional way of perceiving the world. Art provides us with the means to transcend reality, and in so doing serves as a catalyst for an internal discourse that is profoundly inspiring and enlightening. Art provides a truth that is more subtle than that of the intellect, a truth that is integral to our soul, to our spirit. Art provides us access to the foundations of our being and an awareness of a shared humanity that transcends nations and ideologies. The artist's depictions of war allows us to see, more importantly, to feel the misery, the loneliness, the boredom, the horror, the frustration, and the insanity that characterizes unmythologized war. That's war free of distortion and political rhetoric. Perhaps art need not have a message or take a position, but art by its very nature strips war of its pretense and transcends the lies and deceptions that often accompany a nation's resort to war. The art of war cannot help but inform and enlighten and influence, and thereby to incite outrage and social engagement. No wonder Plato, thinking as a politician, saw art as dangerous and subversive. When asked what to do should a famous artist seek entrance to our city, Plato responded, "Shower him with flowers and with praise, and quickly send him on his way." I remember not so many years ago, I was sitting on a hill, Hill 109, somewhere, I don't even remember, somewhere near the Hai Vam Pass north of Da Nang. And they were running, there was a water tanker that used to bring water out to our position. And the kid who used to drive, the Marine who used to drive the water tanker, constantly was shot at every time he ran this road to get up to deliver the water. So needless to say, he tried to go as fast as he can through this one stretch of road so that he can stay alive. That's what heroism is, staying alive. This one particular time when he was running the gauntlet, he unfortunately had to swerve to avoid hitting a civilian, and as he swerved, he rolled the water tanker, and the water tanker rolled over the civilian he was trying to avoid. Quickly on the scene came the S5. The S5 are the military version of lawyers who come and make compensation for wrongful deaths. It is interesting. I learned at that time how the military, at least back then, I'm sure it's much, much better now, compensate civilians for wrongful death. I learned that individual's family was given $200 to compensate them for the death of their son. I also learned, interestingly, that if instead of rolling over the human being, he would have rolled over a cow, the United States government would have paid $400. Most interestingly, if it was a water buffalo that succumbed to the water tanker, it would in fact have been $600. So that was our gauge of the price of human life. We're going now to move into the poetry portion of our symposium. So poetry, in Wordsworth's view, is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Consequently, if powerful feelings are the source from which poetry arises, then perhaps there is no phenomenon in the human experience better to generate poetry than war. Throughout the history of war poetry, we hear the voices of distraught individuals exposing their wounded psyches to public scrutiny. Running through virtually all of the poems in this genre is a feeling of futility and outrage at the violence, brutality, and suffering that is inevitable in war. Warriors write poetry because they must. Doing so, it is hoped, functions as a catharsis, providing a means whereby the poets, deeply affected and traumatized by war, can express their pain, their suffering, and their outrage in verse. Such poetry is inevitably therapeutic, making possible what would otherwise be overwhelming. More importantly, war poems provide a clear warning of war's perils and serve as a profound indictment of those who make war lightly. It is perhaps too much to hope that if more people read Wilfred Owen's or Post-Traumatic Press, the chapbook our poets will be reading from this evening, that war would cease or at least become less frequent. If nothing else, war poems bring home to those who would listen the harsh realities of war and the insanity and moral unacceptability of war's devastation and human suffering. I think it fair to say that the poems you will hear tonight, while typical of a long line of war poetry, may not represent the attitudes of all soldiers who have faced the horrors of war. Some may see war differently, though for the life of me, I cannot understand why. To truly know war is to know that all war is anathema and unnecessary war is sacrilege. Those of us who labor to end war believe that there is an important distinction to be made between the warrior and the war, between those who must fight and those who make policy. Is certainly one of the lessons of Vietnam that those in power strive to blur that distinction and to lead us to believe that to speak out against what we believe to be an unjust and immoral war, we are somehow not supporting the troops. We are somehow unpatriotic. How dare you accuse us of being unpatriotic, of not supporting the troops? We are the troops. We know what it is to live and to die. How dare you accuse us of being unpatriotic? Unfortunately, too many of the wrong lessons were learned from Vietnam. One lesson that I learned from Vietnam is that one way to fight a counterinsurgency guerrilla warfare, the only way of fighting a counterinsurgency guerrilla warfare, is by winning hearts and minds of the people. We've all heard that expression, but it means something. It's real. That's how you do it. And you don't win hearts and minds of the people by blowing up women and children in cars.